Well guys, what can I say? Sometimes we play good poker, and sometimes we just play dreadfully. This is the nature of the beast. There are some factors at play, lots and lots of them, complex ones, simple ones, that will all coordinate together to determine when you play good poker and when you play bad poker. Today, the factors that caused me to play badly were it being early in the morning, not much coffee had been ingested, I jumped straight into my session without warming up at all, I didn't sleep well last night, I was feeling sluggish from the night before, just having a restless night. And yeah, all of this adds up, right? That's the only ones I'm aware of. There are probably more factors behind the scenes, but what causes you to play well and what causes you to play badly? And can you avoid what happened to me today, where I played pretty close, I would say, to the worst poker that I have in my locker at this point? Let's have a look at what that looks like. And you're going to see me replaying a 4-table session here and being pretty critical of myself in quite a few spots. You should aim to do the same when you think you've played badly. Let's get into it. What's up guys, you join me here an hour later after I played this session, 4-tabling Zoom. This is my normal session, is the 4-table fast fold poker. I can keep up with it when I'm not streaming or chatting or whatever. Right now it's going to be a bit chaotic. I know that not all of you love this kind of session review with 4 tables going at once, but I am going to direct your attention to 1 table at a time. And if you do like this format, it's important that you let me know so I can make this format every now and then for the people who do like it. It's good for me to have an objective, well-rounded review of what formats work and what don't, so do keep that coming in the comments. Table 3, we've c-bet the flop small here, and I think turn is borderline. I don't think it's necessarily too thin, but I do think in practice people are going to overfold a bit on turn. I don't think they're going to have slow played enough on flop. I don't think they'll have enough 2-pair combos naturally here, and so checking back turn, because villain's range is a bit more polarized on table 3 to straight, so 1-pair hands than it should be, I think is a nice exploit. Then going for pot-sized river bet here, I think this makes a ton of sense. Our value betting range is basically 2-pair plus in villain's bluff catcher ranges. Mainly 1-pair and bad 2-pair, so just sizing accordingly there with our hand. Table 1 we have pocket 6s against cutoff. Almost fold here right away, but I think peeling 1 is alright. If this was against an earlier position on table 1, we're probably just folding flop immediately. Turn checks through rather quickly. Villain can have some queen x here, but I think turning the 6s into a bluff now is going to be good. We just lose to an absolute ton of 1-pair. Ace 9, ace jack, etc. All this sort of stuff. Ace 10, 10 8 suited, king 8 suited, all of these kind of hands, you know, you can roll off a big list of them. So turning the bottom of your range or near bottom of your range into a bluff there for some moderate sizing on a polarizing river, I think is a good idea and something that people should do more of. So these hands are going to come thick and fast. It was definitely a swingy session, the kind of session where you play for stacks a lot, you play a lot of big to medium sized pots a lot, just one of those ones. Still finding this pool rather soft, although I do struggle to play my A game sometimes when I'm 4-tabling until I'm really in the zone. Poker is that kind of thing where the less you play, the harder it actually is to access your best poker. And also the more you play, the harder it is if you play for too long. You know, you play like long sessions, that can also make it really hard to play your A game. So there's an interesting hand coming up here in just a second that we're going to discuss. Okay, so let's look at this hand on table 4 with Jack 9 of hearts here. Villain goes ahead and 3-bets to 9 big blinds, pretty standard call with the Jack 9 suited. Big blinds should be in theory kind of polar here. Their sizing scheme so far, their timing, looks like a recreational player, I would say, more often than not. Flop is probably playing as mostly just only call in theory. I don't think there'll be a lot of raise going on in this spot at all in like GTO Wizard or Pio. I do think there's an argument against some recreational players to raise flop, just based on the idea that they have way too many overpair and big equity draws when they use the big sizing on flop there. I think it might be like an underbluffed sort of too strong spot, both pre-flop and on flop. So raising flop's probably not horrible, just to mitigate like runouts that destroy your EV and stop you getting paid. But there aren't too many of them at this SPR. When villain checks turn, I think really easy value bet, and we don't have to rush pot growth at this point. The SPR is already coming down. It's about 2, just under 2, and so like a small bet will do for getting the money in by the river. Don't let the queen of spades dissuade you. Just going to be jamming here. Table 1, we a little bit flustered here, a little bit short of time because we've got multiple hands going on, but we go for a very large turn bet here. Kind of saying that we have like ace jack plus, ace 6 suited, 6s, 3s, 10s, ace 10, that kind of thing, repping those sorts of hands. And I think for river, we actually have a really nice jam here. This SPR 1.5, we can probably jam like ace queen plus on this node. Not jamming 9-8 there seems like a little bit of a misplay. I'm not really sure what happened there other than I was just settling into my session, didn't really have time to think. I think there's a lot of like king, queen, king, jack, kings and queens that we unblock there. We're blocking some of the ace X that would call, especially like the ace 8 off that's likely to check back flop and then call down. So a missed opportunity there on table 1 for sure. I actually like bluffing there. I'm not sure why I missed that one. But yeah, sometimes at the start of my sessions, I'm a bit ropey. I'm not like playing my A game yet. I think that's normal. And that's why I recommend to my students, you know, do as I say, not as I do. Do a warm up, you know, get yourself into the zone. Try and get the juices flowing. Don't just jump into a session and start four tabling cold here like I did after minimal sips of coffee at 9 in the morning. Ill-advised. Queen 10, 3-bet pot. Just going to go for small sizing at this SPR. Probably don't have to go too big. Turn is kind of awkward. If we go big here, we start to invite jams. I don't think at this SPR we actually have to go big, so just a fan of like less than half pot here, I think. Sizing this one down a little bit. I'd imagine I go smaller. Yeah, I'm thinking about just going like 8.6 big blinds. I like that. That's the sizing that's going to dissuade jamming the most. If we start to like put a bunch of money into the pot against a weaker player to the point that the SPR is basically like pot committed zone, they're going to shove a lot more. And if they do shove the turn, that's a disaster for Queen 10. So I'm much more comfortable making a sizing that's going to deter jam than one that's going to invite it. When I have a medium equity hand like that, there'd be a real pity to squander in a bet fold line. Ace King in a 4-bet pot, table 4. We cold 4-bet small blind versus button 3-bet here. Going to go for 2 small bets and jam river. You could check turn. I think we block some. We don't. We have the ace of spades actually, so we don't block that many floats. I think with ace of spades it makes a bit more sense to check because you're just unblocking the maximum quantity of like ace queen, ace jack of diamonds, hearts and clubs. So check is also okay there. I think usually solver will bet, but check is alright as well. That's against the reg, so I don't really have a big exploit available there. 4-bet pots are a little bit overfolded, guys. Sneak peek into a bit of grade E there. Grade E of the Carrot Poker School is of course our exploitative mass data driven course. You can check that out at carrotcorner.com. That can help you with all of your mass data exploits that you're hearing so much about these days. They're all the rage. That's where to get them. And one of those is definitely that 4-bet pots are quite overfolded. 3-bet pots and 4-bet pots, there are certain nodes in which the fold equity is quite a bit higher than it should be. Going for a 3-bet here on table 4. Just making it 9 bigs with the ace 5 off. I think that's just a really normal 3-bet bluff. Not much to say about it. On table 3, this is a hand that's pretty standard and mundane, but it's definitely a spot that I think you guys could improve on. We talk about this a lot in our course, Cash Injection. Table 4, by the way, this is a hand I'll 3-bet at a really high frequency. It's not one that I mind squandering if 4-bet, and it's also a hand with nice blockers to the 4-bet range. Getting 4-bet there is the utter disaster. Getting called is fine. You know, you're in position with King 9. You can survive quite nicely, and you can usually outplay people. Like the spots where I feel I have the biggest edge is when I'm in position against capped ranges. So 3-betting a bit wider in position with nice blocker hands like that, doing it at a higher frequency than the sim does. I think that's a good idea. Table 3, we go for this check raise here with the backdoor hand. This is just a play I'd invite you guys to incorporate into your inventory. People in general are c-betting quite wide, quite unselectively, and not defending their c-bets very optimally at low stakes, micro stakes, that sort of thing. So definitely there, if you see like a mix in theory, don't be shy. Go for these flop raises. They're very nice. Big bet with ace 10 here. Let's look at table 4 for a second. Decide to check back here. This is just the sort of part of your range that you are normally giving up on the turn. You have no spade. You might win against the worst ace high once in a blue moon if the run out's dry enough. Looks like an okay give up. I think river, probably best not to take that spot as a bluff on the king river. Queen jack here. On table 2, we open under the gun. We go for a large bet here. On flop and we get called quickly. Turn the gutter. I opt to go for near pot size. Villain calls and there's a king river. Now this is an interesting spot. In this situation, I'm contemplating different sorts of overbet. I'm aware that this is a really good triple barrel spot against pool because their range is full of call, fold natural candidates. So they have a lot of hands like 9-7, pocket 7s, pocket 6s, 5-6, 8-6, 8-7, ace 8, 10-9, jack 9, queen 9, ace 5 of clubs, ace 8 of clubs, ace queen of clubs, ace 10 of clubs. You get the picture. Lots of stuff that goes call, fold. And I'm trying to figure out the optimal sizing. Like I'm definitely bluffing this spot on table 2, but I'm trying to figure out how big to go. And the sizing I actually went for here, ultimately, is going to go like 46 or something, which I think is reasonable. And then I went all in. And this is kind of a bad habit from my GTO days. Like this is definitely a spot where our 6-7 suited, our sets, our 2-pair, like 9-8, I guess, is going to jam. But I don't think we have a ton of jam here, like actually in theory. I think we mostly just have ace king or aces or something like that. And I don't think these hands are jamming. I think these hands are betting like pot or 40 big blinds or something like that. So I think already I'm in danger here. And this isn't necessarily an issue, but I think I'm in danger of just grossly over bluffing because we just don't have a lot of value hands under the gun that fit into this kind of sizing. Also, we're against a kind of wreck looking player that just snap called twice quickly, which indicates that they're probably not thinking much. So what that really suggests is that villain is going to be underly elastic to sizing here. So I think a way better bet size on this river is just pot or slight overbet. Make it like 44, like I was going to originally. There are some nutted hands in villain's range here that are slow playing sometimes. There are some stuff that just two-paired the river to the king. None of that's ever going to consider folding to the overbet jam. The only hands that I think are super elastic between the jam and a bet like 44 might be like king jack of clubs or something, so just not that many combos, and they're not always going to play this way. They might raise flop or turn. So I think this is just bad in hindsight. I think this is like ropey. It's kind of spewy. It's unnecessary against a recreational player, and it's a great value sizing, but I think as a bluff, it's just kind of overkill against someone that's been snap acting. If this is a reg, I think the sizing's probably okay at some frequency. This kind of hand seems reasonable. We're not blocking any folds with this hand. We're not blocking any calls either, so I don't think this is like even the overbet jam candidate. It's probably bluffing smaller in GTO, but yeah, I didn't have a lot of time here. I guess I butchered this. I don't really like this at all now. Not just because of what you're about to see happen. We just got snap called by someone that didn't feel like folding queen 9. Blocking our bluffs was just like, nah, I'm going to call you. I don't care. That happens sometimes on GG Poker. You know, it's a very whalish pool. There are quite a lot of like quite weak players playing this pool. So yeah, that can definitely happen. But yeah, I didn't think about that enough on the river. I didn't have enough finesse. I kind of had the thought about jamming and I barbarically just went for it without considering what my range is really doing. And it's not that I want to make that decision. Theoretically, I want to play exploitatively there, of course. But yeah, I should think a bit more about what my range is actually up to there just to ground myself. And then I should think a bit more about the villain's timing, the player type that's likely, the elasticity. Yeah, not a fan of that at all now. I think this is something I really need to eliminate from my game if I'm going to grind out a really big win rate in this pool. I don't want to be playing my C game like that in spots, and in order to avoid it, I'm definitely going to have to warm up before sessions and make sure that I'm actually playing my best, because there's a very big difference between my best and my, you know, C game and my A game. And I think you guys will probably experience something similar. I don't like this play on table 3 either. This is another misplay. And as soon as I did it, I was like, what am I doing? Honestly, this session, I kind of just felt like I wasn't really in the zone. So let me talk about table 3 a little bit, and this is another thing, like a little bit of a mass data clue here. So we check the flop, which is fine. You can bet or check here, but we'll do a lot of checking on this board. Hijack big blind. We check the turn. This is just an overbluff sizing because player type equals line. Like this is a reggy player, almost certainly. And they've not bet the turn, but they're now saying they have a 7 or a straight or something like that can happen. But we have a very good bluff catcher here. We unblock bluffs by having the ace. Like villain is unlikely to be bluffing too much ace high here. And we block sets and bolts and stuff by having the 6. So in theory, this is probably a call. But in practice, it's even more of a call because this spot is just going to be overbluffed. Like villain lands here with way too many hands that could have bluffed the turn but didn't. And yeah, I don't know why I folded here. I really don't like this fold. I was just asleep this morning, basically. Playing my C game. I think this is what this video should actually be called. Playing my C game because it's 9 in the morning and not enough coffee has been ingested. Let's blame the lack of coffee. But yeah, definitely a few misplays already here, and this is something we need to fix. You guys sometimes see me, well, you usually see me play my best because I do usually play close to my best, but every now and then I have a session like this where I just don't play very well. And I think this is really normal for all of us, and it's good to be open and honest and transparent and say, look, I have a best, I have a ceiling, and I have a floor. I have like a worst game as well. And I have everything in between. And I'm perfectly capable of playing anywhere within that range of A game to F game. And I need to be really transparent and honest with myself about what version of my game I'm playing. Okay, table 3, we go for the 3-bet here. We go for the check. What happens in this hand makes me even more sure that I should have just called in the previous hand. So check raising jacks and just GII here, getting in, is going to be normal. We lose the queens, but that's about it. 6s, 5s, and 3s. I mean, there might be 3s, there might be 5s. There will be 6s at some frequency, but yeah, this SPR, we don't really care about that. We've flopped quads here. Want to check 5-5-4 really often. Turn, I think, is a mix. You can bet, you can check. I think people are going to bet a bit too many bluffs here and a bit too many merges here, so I like check. And on the Queen of Hearts river, it's very polarizing. Like if villain has air, they're going to bluff a lot. If they had a hand like 6s, they're likely just betting turn by now. If they have a queen, they're going to bet for value. So this is a clear river check as far as I'm concerned. Villain doesn't take the bait this time. And yeah, okay, if villain has like ace 10, ace 9, we might lose a bit of EV there by not betting the river, but many of the pairs are just not slow playing enough there. They're just not checking down to the river in this pool very often. And so just going for the check against the more polarized range, either hit the queen or the flush or has very little, is going to be the right play against humans there, I'm pretty sure. So I'm a fan of that one, even though it didn't work out. Looks kind of silly to check quads down, right? When you first start playing poker, you'd look at that and think it's insane, but I think like the more experience you get, the more normal that begins to feel. The key being that we're out of position, not in position. If you're in position, don't check down quads on the river. It's not a good idea. So yeah, the hands are coming thick and fast here. Really intrigued to hear what you guys think of this format, exposing every single hand I've played here. And I want to do this because I don't feel like I played well. I want to look at all of the mistakes. 5s is unfortunate. This stack has a 50 VPIP, near enough. I think at this point we probably just have to call, but it's going to be close and it's just going to be neither here nor there. Don't have a lot to say about that. If that was someone tighter, like, I don't know, maybe it's like a marginal fold, but I think against a 50 VPIP player that could well be tilted, this is just a get-in. Unfortunately, as played, you could just fold 5s in the first place with that stack behind you, but we didn't really notice or think about that. Obviously, it's a break-even sort of 3-bet pre, so we do lose there to kings, which is unfortunate. Pocket 7s against that stack. I don't really love jam. I don't really love call either. Like, it's kind of marginal in theory. I don't have a lot of room to maneuver there. Just folded it on table 4. Table 1, we see bet ace is tiny into 2 people on king, queen, deuce, mono. I think this is a pretty easy just bet fold when raised in a multi-way pot on a monotone board with very bad redraw. We have a hand that's dead very often, and if it is ahead, it's not going to be far ahead for the most part. So pretty easy bet fold there. Let's just have another look at that one. A lot of people kind of go wrong here. They get blinded by aces. So we go for the small bet, 3-way pot, squeezed pot, and raise. This is going to be king, queen plus a very large amount of the time. Very, very large. I don't think people are raising much else here. I don't think they're raising like king, jack of hearts. I don't think they're really bluffing very often. They don't have a lot of naked ace of diamonds hands. Yeah, I think a clear fold. If we call there, all that's going to happen is we're going to check the turn. The majority of people have too strong of a range anyway, and we'll just value bet and we'll fold the worst hand. And against people who are bluffing, they may well just blast us off on the turn anyway, since they've been crazy enough to raise the flop in that environment. Very good flop fold there. Happy with that. I remember making that one and thinking, okay, now we're starting to play a little bit of poker. Like, let's keep this up. So I think I got better and better as the session went on. This is very often the way it goes. We kind of warm up and then start playing better poker. Queen 10 here. Can go for a small bet. Don't remember if this hand on table 1 turns into much. I think you can bet or check the turn. You can bet turn, check back river, or check turn. Doesn't really matter. Go for bet turn this time. Flop top set here, but sadly nothing much happened. Spoiler alert, I go for a check raise. The button folds. That's really it, so let's skip forward. So this is the key spot here on table 4. Table 2, we're just going to double barrel the queen 9 and win. Table 4, 8-5 of hearts. We go for the raise when small blind limps. I think this is a great hand to raise. We just clean up a lot of equity. We got a lot of hands that are 62% against us to fold. Pre-flop, like queen 7 off or something. All the kinds of stuff that fish are just completing and then folding. On the flop, I just go for a really small bet here. And then on the turn, I decide not to barrel with absolute air here. Like, I don't think it's horrible to barrel turn actually on the 9. It's probably all right. But I decide to take a bet check bet line here instead, which I really like. Bet check bet is the kind of spot that it's a mandatory bluff if the texture runs out favorably for you. And I think 9 queen is a favorable enough run out that this probably does become at least optional, if not mandatory. Whereas on some drier textures, theory is going to say you need to be really reserved with your bluffing and only bluff occasionally and blah, blah, blah. So bet check bet opportunities are definitely very textural dependent. And I think that's the very overfolded one there as well. When on the 9 queen run out, it's just going to be a lot of natural weak hands. Getting to the river, not bluffing enough, ending up just check folding in villain's range. So bluffing 8 high seems really important there. 10 high flush on table 4 with c-bet flop, blind versus blind, single raise pot. Going to go ahead and double barrel. Villain calls. Don't want to go too huge on river here. We're losing to some other flushes. I think this is just a clear B75 kind of spot. Definitely want the value bet. We get snapped. Unfortunately, we run into the jack 7 of clubs, which is normal. I don't think villain can raise river with that sort of flush. We probably do have some big boats playing that way, like using a smaller size on river because they're blocking so much stuff. So yeah, I think we probably have plenty of hands that beat the jack 8 there in that line, so not raising river seems viable. So table 1, we go for 3-bet with ace queen off. 7-4 deuce, we have some backdoors. I think big bet here is going to be pretty normal. Really high frequency thing to do. Ace queen doesn't really have massive amounts of showdown value here. It has some, but betting is kind of a hybrid. Hybrid is another word from the carrot poker school. What that means is that worse hands can call. Some hands that are maybe chopping with us, like ace queen of clubs, can fold. And we can also just clean up a load of fold equity from hands that might win against us later, either by hitting or by bluffing us. Queen of hearts, 10 of diamonds here. We just bet the flop and check back the turn, blind versus blind, to go for a river bet here. I think that's pretty clear. And we get raised small on this flop, which is kind of weird. Like, this is an exploit I actually recommend that you do in 3-bet pots and soft pools, because people do c-bet a lot. I think peeling with the queen of spades here is the normal line in theory. I don't think we're folding this hand yet. This could just be like some completely full of shit weaker player random flop raise. Could be really mergy as well. It could contain some 10s, some 6s. So I opt to bet this hand on the turn, mainly because I just don't mind bet folding at this SPR at all. And we're bluffing now. We can get folds from better. We can clean up equity. We get double check raise, which I'm pretty sure is extremely strong. So just obviously going to be folding there. I'm okay with that one. It obviously looks gross and it's kind of a horrible spot, but I don't think we did a whole lot wrong there. Sometimes hands leave you feeling a sense of loss, like, oh man, that really sucked. I hate that, but it doesn't mean that you actually did anything wrong. So we see bet flop small here. I think the jack turn is a pretty overfolded spot. This looks like a weaker player with way too wide of a range for calling button. So the ace 4 out of position on turn, it's a little bit spewy, like with minimal equity like this, but because the jack turn is so reasonable for our range and not very good for theirs, I think we can definitely still barrel just with a naked overcard, though it is flimsy. And then on the king river, I think this is a really automatic barrel, but I don't want to go too big because the villain does have like ace 10 or 10-9, they've just made a straight. If they've hit the king, they're never going to fold. If they have trick queens, they're never going to fold. So I think realistically here, we're trying to get fold equity from pocket pairs, under pairs, effectively. That's like the only thing that's going on. I think I could have gone a bit smaller actually. 19.4 is a bit big for that purpose. I don't mind this bet, but I think it starts to get into the realms of like no man's land when I go this big, because this run out is so horrendous that villain probably isn't going to think twice with like 7s or 8s or something now. They're likely just to fold. You could also argue that a lot of those hands folded on turn, but I don't know if that's so true in this pool. I don't know. I'm not a massive fan of this river bluff either. I think this is like, again, just like misjudged sizing here. Don't love this. Yeah, this is way too big. I don't know what I'm actually doing with the sizing. We're just burning the maximum here against a hand like ace queen, like villain had, or a straight or something like that. And not really, it's just so unnecessary to go that big against the hands we're actually getting folds from. So another poor spot. Definitely not playing our best here. 4-tabling, I definitely play worse than 2-tabling, but I can get into a zone where I play well 4-tabling. That was just not today, unfortunately. A lot of really misjudged like bet sizes in particular is what I'm seeing on the river, like kind of dicey river bluffs for dicey sizes. It's funny because a lot of these hands at the time I thought, oh well, that's just fine, that's just normal, it's standard, I'm playing well, and then I realized afterwards that I'm not. So sometimes like when you're not playing well, your ability to actually notice how well you're playing also gets affected at the same rate. So you can like be playing really well and be on point with your analysis of how well you're playing and know you're playing well, or you can be playing badly, and because your brain isn't working, your analysis of your play is also bad and you think you're playing well when you're not. And this is what happened to me this morning. It's super close with 10s here. I decide to check back flop, villain big bets turn. I think you can go either way in this spot. Opted to fold. I don't know, man. I mean, just very, very break-even marginal spot on the king turn. Maybe it's a call, but I don't think it's like a huge swing. Pocket 10s, going to double barrel and just triple off here in position. Not really anything else to say in a 3-bet pot. That's the only real line. But yeah, I think doing this is good for me. Like making myself accountable to you guys and saying, look, this is me playing my worst. Like this is what it looks like. These are the things I'm getting wrong. Obviously the 10s is fine. Don't have an issue with this. Hard to go wrong there. 4-betting ace 3 suited. Again, no problem. Button versus cutoff. This is probably a reasonable 4-bet on balance. Villain snap calls, never good to see. This is a pretty standard hand, another one that didn't go our way, but I don't think there's anything wrong with this one. We see bet flop. Turn is a 5. Now in theory, we're meant to be able to block really often here. I hope I just make this small enough, just make it really nice and small. And we clean up folds here from 6s, 7s, 9s, 10s at a decent frequency. Ace queen floats that we clean up, that kind of thing. We get jammed on. I don't think this is many draws. I think that this is probably just a king or some hand villain is going with most of the time. So I think we just have to fold there. But yeah, double barrel with the bottom pair, with the redraw, and the value of the denial is going to be good. So I think that one's all right. Again, another one that feels kind of disgusting. Don't worry guys, we ran a bit better towards the end of this session. Got back some of these stacks we're currently bleeding. Just in case you were worried about me, you know. Ace King's got just about enough showdown that I think we can check down here. We could also just have started blasting on table 3 on the turn there and didn't. Table 1 is interesting. Let's just have a quick look at that. Then I'm going to skip forward to the more exciting hands at the end. So table 1 we've checked back on the flop. Standard checked back. No, we've called a turn bet here. I think this is just over-bluffed in general, although this is a good texture for big blind. I think we should call here. Ace of spades being a good thing because the aces that we can hit are more clean on the river now on table 1. Queen of spades, villain checks, and we could show this down for some EV, but I think just overbetting is better. We have the nut flush blocker just in case they're slow playing that. But more importantly, I think this is just going to be an overfolded note now. You can show this down for some EV, like I say. but that doesn't necessarily mean you should show it down. Like, you're always weighing up the EV of bet with the EV of check, and when you think that bet is higher, you should do it, even if you do have showdown value, and even if check is still, you know, netting some money. It really is, like, eye-opening to see, like, how many mistakes I was making in this session. It's just so annoying that you can think your game's in really good shape, and then you can just, like, one day rock up to the tables and be like, oh, I'm just playing shit. There's so much variation in performance, like in sports, in games. I get this in chess or in bridge, you know, I don't play a lot of chess anymore, but when I did, sometimes I just show up to the board and be a 1300 instead of a 1700, and I'd be like, what the hell is going on? And in bridge, it's the same. Like, some days I just feel like I'm on a different planet. I'm just not thinking. So this is a reg. I just decided to jam 9s here because I've got other stuff going on. You could also slow play. I'm not playing very well, like in this session. Didn't really fancy the 4-bet pot out of position with 9s here, so just opted for the jam line, which is also okay. I think 9s is getting towards the bottom of what we jam. But yeah, we managed to win one. Beg your pardon, we win one. Okay, let's skip forward now to some more interesting spots. Pocket aces, table 4, going for the open, getting 3-bet by a 42 VPIP weaker player. Going for the 4-bet. You'll note that I just sized my 4-bet up a little bit there compared to normal. Jack 10-7, not a fantastic board for hand or range, but still a board that we're doing amazingly on against someone with too wide of a range, who this almost certainly is. They can have like Ace-Jack off, for example, or King 10 off. And this really sucks. Like, we arrive here at SPR 0.5. I don't think we have a choice other than to just jam here. We're not going to be check folding. Check calling seems way worse than jamming. Yeah, so let's stick it in. Even if we're like a 45% favorite here when it all goes in, it's probably still better to jam than to check, because we can't check fold. We are not going to run it twice. We're chasing our losses, guys. We're on tilt. We're trying to get our money back. So of course we run it once and we don't cash out. Refuse to give up that 1% extra, just for the sake of reducing variance. Some people like doing that, you know? And if that's you, if that really makes your sessions a lot more bearable, then okay. I don't really mind running bad in a session that much. It doesn't bother me too much. So I think I'm okay not cashing out and keeping the extra 1%. But I do speak to people who say that that actually helps them a lot. All right, a couple more hands to get through before we wrap up for today. Let me know what you think about the format. Again, important for me to find that out from you guys. Table 3, gonna check call, I'd imagine here with Jack 10. 7 is pretty reasonable for our range. I think you can build some leads here. The main reason I'm doing this is that my opponent's just very passive in general. This player's just very tight. So I figured that hoping they bluff me on 10, 9, 8, 7 is just absolute lunacy, and it's just delusion. So better just to donk small and then bet river big, and of course they have a jack when they call down here. I wanted to find a "you are an infuriating nit, I hate you" emote, but all I could find was tilt, because GG Poker does a good job of not allowing players to abuse the hell out of other players. I think that's actually a nice touch. When chat existed on, I guess there is chat, but I remember back in the old days on PokerStars, like, people would say horrendous things to you in the chat when they were losing to you, especially heads up. I used to play a bit of heads up, and at one point a guy just continuously said, "Die rat, die pig, rat, filthy pig, filthy rat, filthy dog, die rat," for the entire session, like repeatedly. And I won like 9 buy-ins from that player, so I was quite happy about it. But yeah, that was kind of insane. Like, nothing happened to them, I don't think. So it's good that, like, the worst we can do now is like throw piles of trash at each other and, you know, wave and say, "Oh no, I'm running bad," and have D-Negs come on the screen and dance. That's about as bad as it gets on GG. About as abusive as it gets is that D-Negs dances in your face when you've lost the pot. That's the worst thing that happens. And that's pretty bad though. Like, don't get me wrong, that is pretty bad, but that's thankfully as bad as it gets. Ace 4, we checked back a couple of times. I think we're low enough down now that we just want to bluff river. Interesting with sizing here. I went to go and get the door there, and I've left the door open to my office, and lo and behold, guys, this happened. So now we're not going to get any peace to finish the video, as always. Cat's playing his A game. I might be playing my F game, but the cat's playing his A game in terms of harassment. So tail in the FaceTime. So 2x pot, what's that all about? Well, what's my value region here? Lots of Jack X, basically. Loads and loads of Jack X. That's my value region. Not really an overpair, not really a boat, not really a flush. These hands are betting earlier for the most part, so just like a jack. Some queen, but that can bet smaller, so I probably have 2 sizes on the river, like a B75 size, and then like the 2x pot size on table 3 there that you actually saw me use on that occasion. Again, when you're bluffing, you're just kind of thinking about what your value region is doing, and you're mapping your bluff size out to your value region whenever you're not making like a crude sort of vacuum-based exploit. All right, let's look at one more spot or so. So I think table 2 here is quite a good exploitative situation. We have Jack 3 of clubs. You can 3-bet here, you can call here. Don't fold it to the min open, whatever you do. I've not done this today, have I? If you fold Jack 3 of clubs to the min open, stop playing this fighting game. You're ruining this game for me. You're ruining it for everyone else. It's a disgrace. Go do something else. So yeah, we haven't done that today, so we have to throw that in and get berated by C game Pete. It's even worse than getting berated by A game Pete. So we go for a small flop stab here, which I think is great. It's going to be overfolded on the monotone board. And I just go for like half pot here. And the idea is that this needs like very little fold equity, right? 33% to be as good as just giving up. And I think we just get close to 50% there. I think we get like 40, 50%. The fourth heart is just something that people are very bad at having here because they bet the flop when they have a heart and don't when they don't. They can just fold so much random one pair. In this spot, I think it's a super good exploitative bluff spot. So some good stuff today, a lot of bad stuff today. Basically just a C game session, maybe a D game session. Definitely going to look to warm up a bit more in the future. And if I am going to four table, maybe start with 2 and then add a third and add a fourth. That's definitely a way that you can go about it. You could see that my play maybe got a bit progressively less horrible as that session went on, but definitely is some thoughtlessness. I mean, it is hard when you're four tabling, you don't have a lot of time bank, but still an unacceptable performance and one we'd like to make a rarity. If you guys have some thoughts on when you play your best, when you play your worst, session length, time of day, whether you've exercised, whether you've just eaten, all of these kind of things can help. Post in the comments. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you back here soon for another video. It's carrotcorner.com for everything from us. Bye for now, guys.